we'll talk about today. It's this the number one Achilles heel that we have as a business right now.
Hey, this is Blake Sloan. I've been selling real estate over 14 years. Our team of highly trained professionals, along with our unmatched marketing, has sold thousands of homes here in the Myrtle Beach area, and this is how we do it.
I got to repeat and reinforce. Repeat, reinforce. What does that mean, you think?
Let them know over and over. This is what's going to happen.
I'm pretty crazy people on the home inspection like 3 times before it actually happens.
Over and over and over, right? So I must take them back to the pre-frame, which is what? Back to the pre-frame, which is what? Here's what's going to happen. So this is like different parts of the transaction. This is pre-inspection, post-inspection, right? This can be post-contract acceptance. Then I do pre-inspection. There's multiple points. And I said, what are the biggest touch points you guys think they fall through? After contract, due diligence, right? Inspection, due diligence.
Produce a little title work. Oh, the lender. My lender's asking me for so much.
Yes.
I just want to blow the deal up. I can't believe they're asking me for all
I got that in here too, the lender part.
Yeah.
I talk about all the time. I have a line to use. Hey, look, here's the deal. Unfortunately, we're having to borrow $400,000 from the lender. So would you give $400,000 to somebody without actually asking for any documents? No, right? No one would. So here's the deal. That lender's going to ask you for all kind of stuff. They're going to ask you. Yep. And you know what we got to do? We got to make sure we give them whatever they need. And they may ask you the same thing over and over. You know what? We don't have $400,000 cash right now, which we did. So we need to get this stuff in and make sure you get that money from the bank. Sound fair enough? Yes. Whatever it is, you pre-frame them on the lending stuff. That's a big one. They get, I like to say almost, they get fatigued from the lender stuff that they request, right? So that's a big one. I'll make sure I'm hitting on that part overall. Back to the pre-frame. Talk about second piece here is I reframe the new variables. What does that mean?
Setting frames and subframes.
Reframe new variables. So if I have a buyer that does back out, what do I need to do? If I get him back under contract second time, what am I going to do? Hey, Ryan, here's the deal. We backed out that last deal. What are we going to do to make sure this doesn't happen here again? Right, so we just had the $1 million plus buyer back out 3 different deals. That's an issue that we have. That's our fault. Okay? The reality is we have to make sure I miss something on our pre-frame and reframe if I get the same person back out multiple times. Are you guys with me on this? If it's emotional, then I miss something here on my certainty piece. And I'm not taking from pain to pleasure. Or if it's a physical issue with the house, I'm not pre-framing them what to expect and what not to expect and what's reality they can get from a credit standpoint or a repair standpoint. You guys with me on this? It's very, very important that we're talking about this as well, overall. So reframe new variables. As things come up in the process, I got to make sure I reframe what they are. With me on this? It's like the guy on the example, even the listing, he wanted to go compare condos to condo hotels. What's the problem with condo hotels? They can't get financing. So the guy across the street that's not on the ocean, that's friggin' 800 square feet bigger than you, he can get a loan. Guess what? He can't get on your property. A loan, by the way, you have timeshare in your building, and the reality is no one wants to touch a building with timeshare in the building from a financing standpoint. The last 6 deals that closed in your unit were all cash. So let me ask you this. Here's his name. Do you think we're going to get a financing buyer like the last 3 examples you give me in your building? No, so then why are you bringing them to me? Right? And I'm having that conversation. That's a listing process, but it's the same exact thing from the... And here, a listing is this whole thing too, right? This is a listing deal in itself. Once you get listed is when it starts. You guys, because they get all the showing issues and the people no-show, same thing. The listing wants to cancel because people no-show. What does that mean? If you have a pissed-off seller that's angry people no-show the showing, what does that mean? You didn't pre-frame in the listing appointment that, hey, look, guess what? Agents are terrible. Most of them are slack, and they're going to book appointments, and you're listing, and guess what's going to happen? They're not going to show up. And you know what we're going to do? Not worry about it. We're going to keep marketing because I just need one. And if they didn't show up and walk in your house, they weren't the right buyer anyways because they probably drove by it and kept on driving. It didn't waste your time. With me on this? Like, this is how you pre-frame people. That's where you make sure that all of a sudden, like, wow. Next thing here, I got to make sure I'm attacking the next roadblock. What does that mean? I have to anticipate what's happening next. Meaning, I got to be smart. My sales IQ's got to be high. Like, what's going to happen next? What's going to go sideways next? And I'm having the conversations ahead of time so I can lessen the blow, where I can control how they think about what happens when it happens. Hey, you're probably thinking this, and we got to have it next. And you know what? That lender's going to ask you for a whole lot more stuff. You know what we're going to do? We're going to get that to them. And how do I do this? Hey, give you a call. I want to give you a call, 2-week update. See how it's going with you. See what you're thinking about, and just kind of let you know what's going to happen going forward. Whatever it is.
I'd use that too.
Yeah, but I'm just using a intro of, hey, look, I just want to give you a 2-week update, and you're probably thinking this. Most likely, he's probably going to need some more documents from you, and guess what? It's probably going to be annoying, and that's okay. You know why? Like I mentioned earlier, we're having to borrow $400,000. You wouldn't just give anybody $400,000, would you, without getting some documents? No, and unfortunately, they're going to need those documents 2 or 3 or 4 times. And so it's going to be annoying. It's going to be a pain in your ass, you know, just being real with you. But guess what? It's not going to be a pain in your ass when you got this brand new house down here and you're loving it, right? Taking them back down from the pit, back up, right? Very important. So whatever it is, I have to anticipate, I have to make sure I attack that overall. That's also be things like the home inspection, the termite inspection, repairs getting done, whatever it is in that scenario. Okay? On listings, I prefer in many cases to try to get to a credit. Why is that? It's much easier to give a $3,000 credit than it is to organize 6 different contractors to fix 6 different things. And then what happens when the contractor fixes it? Then what happens? They're not happy with it, right? They're not happy with it, or they want to see receipts, or whatever it is, right? So I'm going to give you a credit for that in many cases, and what that is. Make sense? And you guys have seen it, right? If you get the repair request that has 69 line items on it, what does that tell you? The agent's an idiot, and they don't do any of this stuff. Okay, and so your job is to help neutralize that, get your seller down, your buyer up, if you got the listing, right? It's very important to do in that scenario. And the next piece here is understand what to anticipate, right? I just wrote that there, but anticipate's the key word here. Meaning I got to know what to look for next with that. But you also got to understand, like, if I have a deal fall through, I have a conversation with that buyer about why they backed out and how they're not going to back out the next deal because of that. And what do you think, this is a side note, I wasn't sure where to put this. What do you think the number one way for you to keep your deals from blowing up is?
Okay.
A high due diligence. If you're not willing to put $1,000 into it, you ain't serious about it. So you want me to take my seller, take their listing off the market for 10 to 15 days for your seller to back out, your buyer to back out, or $500? Obviously, you're not very confident about what it is. And I'll tell my seller in many cases, hey, look, I think you should reject the offer. And here's the deal. If it's at least $1,000, I say, hey, look, they backed out, but guess what I got you? $1,000. Is it worth $1,000 for 10 days? Right, it's $3,000 a month right there, and we're already in the market. Okay, so if you're accepting $500, same thing your buyer. Hey, look, are you serious about buying this thing? We need to show the seller that you're serious about buying it. Because here's the thing. I want your buyer to have a pain of disconnect. What does that mean? If they have $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 due diligence or earnest money, that's earnest money, $1,000 plus due diligence, what are the chances they're going to back out over some dumb?
No.
Near as likely. But what's happening is we're getting so weak on here because you're so desperate out a deal, you're not pre-framing your people enough to have enough due diligence. In North Carolina, they have $200,000 due diligence fees for high-end properties. My buddy did one in Charlotte at Lake Norman, $250,000 due diligence. But you guys are worried about $500, right? It's one of those things. If your people are backing out a lot because your due diligence is too low. If you double your diligence, your deal fall through will cut in half. 4th piece. This is important, and people don't know it. Know your numbers. And own your numbers. Sorry, I put know and own your numbers. Know and own your numbers. It's very important. What would that mean? I track it all. A lot of people don't track it. Why? They're scared to look at it, right? Or not organized enough to do so. Who knows their falls outs this year? But the more I know the numbers, the more aware I am of it, and the less likely I am to allow that to continue. You guys with me on that? If I step on the scale every day and watch the scale goes down. If I don't get on the scale, I slowly creep back up. And so I got to make sure I'm tracking this. The first step is track it, and then what I do? I want to analyze it. Meaning what?
Understand why?
Yes, and I'm not going to go through a story of like, oh, they're crazy, or, you know what I mean? Like, that's what everybody, oh, they're crazy, and this happened. Well, if they're crazy, you should have known they're crazy. You should have pre-framed the crazy. Period. Right? Hey, I know you're crazy, right? You're going to probably want to back out of this deal. We're not going to back out. Just super important for us to understand that I have to make sure I'm doing that. Third piece of this says I must own it. The only way you ever change it is to own it. Meaning that I've got to own whatever the reason. All the reason it fell through is because of me. And I got to go back and figure out what the biggest reason is. What do you think it is? Along with this. Fear of conflict. The more you avoid conflict, the broker you're going to be. Now, I need to do the conflict with tact. I can't be rude about it, mean about it, but I can't let some slide that I know doesn't need to be slide. And we've all done it. Like I think that example a while ago, you get butterflies in your stomach. You know you should say it, but you don't say it because you're worried about losing the deal or losing the client, and ultimately the deal falls through in that scenario. You guys with me on this? Like, it's super important to look at overall. What's the target rate for fall throughs?
5%.
1 out of 10. What most people do is blame it on somebody else. Oh, it was lender. Oh, it was this. It was that. But ultimately, what could I have done to change the outcome earlier? If it is a lender issue, where could I have gotten with a different lender earlier on before it's too late? Right? Whatever it is, could I have found a lender that can get them done? You know what I mean? There's all kind of different things that you have to look at that can be changed or be different. Could I have gone them directly to the builder and used the builder lender to help get that deal done? Whatever it is, I need to make sure I analyze that and figure it out. But I got to own it before I can change it. Most people mindlessly go through business blaming things on everyone else when they could have changed the outcome. And that's the question I always ask. Could I, or here, let's just say, could I, yes, on that one, I have changed the outcome? Number one. Number two, this is where it gets, a lot of people say, oh, no, I couldn't change the outcome. Okay. Is there someone on this planet that could have changed the outcome in that situation? What's the answer to that most of the time? Absolutely. My job is to figure out what would that person do that I didn't do. And this is true in listings that don't get signed. I always ask that. You should drive Jeremy crazy. I say, hey, I understand that, but is there someone on this planet that could have signed that person? Most of the time the answer is what? Yes. And my job to get better as an expert is to figure out what would they have said, what would they have done for them to get that deal done that I didn't do. And what it does is opens your mind up tremendously to other opportunities of how I could have handled a situation. Okay, it's very, very important. But this is very scary for us right now because deals are harder to come by than they ever have been, right? More competition, lower commissions, all this stuff. And so if deals are hard to come by, I got to make sure I'm putting time and effort into doing what? Keeping them together. Right? And so this is a skill set. This is sales IQ, but this is one that most people, they sleep on this one. And this is the silent killer that gets you.